he traveled in the soft embrace of the forest's shadow. The trees bowed and twisted slightly when he passed. Beasts followed, but none dared bite. The village of Dren was already dead by the time he arrived. Not in the usual sense. There were no corpses in the street, no plague carts, no smoking ruins. The houses still stood, the doors still hung. But it was silent in a way that villages are never meant to be. No laughter, no firelight, no dogs barking or wheels creaking, just stillness. Walking into town, he noticed a sigil burned into every doorframe, carved into tree trunks, and painted in blood on the stone statue in the center of town. Necromancy, a vile form of death magic. He crouched by the bloody statue and ran 2 fingers along its base. It pulsed faintly. He took a step back and inhaled, sharp and shallow. There were bones beneath this village, but they were not resting. Quickly, he reached into the inner folds of his coat, withdrew a length of black cord, and knotted it 7 times. With it tucked between his hands as if in prayer, he whispered words older than empires and trees. His eyes clouded as the ground pulsed slightly and shifted. It was quiet for a few seconds. Then the sound of grinding sand and scratching bone echoed in the courtyard. A decomposing hand burst from the earth. Then another and another. The first group finally broke free of their earthen shackles. Skin stretched over half-formed faces. Their eyes were caked with dirt and soot. Black magic held them together, where bone and decaying flesh had failed. All 12 turned toward him. Before they could move, his chant ended, and the knotted cord braided onto his left hand began to glow. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air. With a flick of his fingers, the undead burned too. They collapsed, one after the other, falling apart mid-stride. Their bodies turned to dust before they even hit the ground. 12 glowing balls of light slowly faded, and darkness, once again, enveloped the square. He turned to the remaining undead and counted only 8. With a scoff and another flick of his finger, they followed their predecessors. Released from soul slavery to a dark wizard from nightmares. The glowing cord on his hand finally burned out. Where the braids had touched his skin was now red and inflamed with brand-like wounds. With a wave of his right hand, dark magic seeped into the burns. As he gritted his teeth, the undamaged flesh slowly stitched itself together. What was left behind was slightly scarred skin, like a healed wound from a very sharp blade. He knows death and dark magic, for it is his magic. Magic he rules and forces to obey. The best way to fight fire is with fire, one of his teachers would say. Granted, his teacher was a dragon lord, but it was under her tutelage that he learned to combat what he feared most, what took away his family and the family of so many others. He moved silently toward the part of town where dark magic was thickest, toward the village chapel, the building from which all the dark magic in the area had spread. From the flow of magic alone, he was able to tell that this was a convergence anchor. Convergence anchors draw power to the necromancer through sacrifice and death. It also helps the necromancer control their abominations across long distances. The inside of the chapel was furnished with 4 rows of pews, separated by a central aisle, lined with fine linen, dead flowers, and bones. On the altar was a book made with wet skin that pulsed like it had veins. He raised his hands and began weaving them through the air in complicated patterns. He moved so fast, a mortal would only see after images. In the center of the complex motions, a black ball flickered into existence. Dark magic began to be pulled from the air and into the flickering void. He stopped moving his hands, and the dark void floated peacefully above his palm. Slowly, he placed his hand directly on the open book. It screamed. It wasn't the book or a soul tied to it. It was the man on the other end. Miles away, deep in meditation, a necromancer suddenly spasmed backward in his tent. As every control tether snapped at once, his soul, trapped in his mind, spiraled into an endless torture of his own making. The Ashwalker closed the book with a snap. He could feel all the dark magic tethers winking out one by one. They had spread all over Eleanor and the countries that bordered it. He left the chapel in silence. The people of Eleanor would never know what happened here. There would be no celebrations had or songs sung. But somewhere, in a tent soaked in cold sweat and urine, lay a master of death magic, twitching, mute and broken. And that was enough. For now.